Hello, everybody. Can we please first just say welcome and thank you and amazing cheers to the team at English Australia and to the Mental Health SIG who have put this symposium together. It takes a lot of work and energy to do that. So thank you to them. And I'd also like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands and waterways, wherever it is that you are located, and pay respects to elders past, present and emerging. Today, oh, look, I've only got half an hour, but today we are going to be looking at the courage to be confident in this brave new world that we're facing. So let me just remember to share the sound on my screen at the same time. Let's just jump into this presentation. If you have got any questions along the way, please make sure that you type those into your into the Q&A box rather than into the chat box. If you have any questions, please put them into there. We will, if we can, I'll answer some of those along the way. Otherwise, we'll make sure we've got some time at the end to go through those as well. So thank you so much for being here. As Sophie said, I'm Anita. I'm a confidence coach and human behaviour expert, which means I help people make sense of the weird stuff that they do. And for me, an important thing is understanding first up what mental health is. And it's not about the absence of illness. It is about living your best, most confident life. And that doesn't matter if you are a student, if you're a staff member, if you're whoever. How can we help make sure that we are living our best, most confident lives? So research, there's a lot of stuff that we know. There's a bunch of stuff that we don't know. People way smarter than me have done a lot of research. And what I love about research is that oftentimes it tells our bosses stuff that coal-face workers like us already know. So we're just going to run through this really quick because I think you probably already know a whole bunch of this, but there's some research that came out just before the beginning of the COVID, and it showed that 95% of students, this is international students in Australia and New Zealand, 95% of them were really struggling with their personal well-being, impacted by their studies. 95%, it's a massive, massive number. The research also showed that about 20% of students were ready to drop out. They'd had enough. They were really stressed out. What was really interesting also was that about a third of students kind of didn't even think that anybody cared at their providers. They thought that they didn't care about their well-being. This is a really frightening statistic for us and something that we need to take note of. As I said, I love that researchers come up with stuff that we already kind of know. This one was one of my favorites, and that was that if we don't deal with stuff when it's small, it is going to get big, mental health challenges included. If we don't deal with these challenges when they're small, they will get big. And this is what happens when mental health challenges get to the point of so big that they are so overwhelming that students don't know what to do. The Coroner's Prevention Unit at the beginning of 2021 put out this report about the student suicides that had happened. This is only in Victoria. They listed a number of challenges that students were facing. What they didn't talk about, though, and I don't know is actually recorded or mentioned anywhere, is the number of unsuccessful attempts of suicide that students had been involved in. I know that there was one provider that I was talking to, an accommodation provider, and in one exam period, they had in their one property 8 unsuccessful attempts in one exam period. So this is a significant challenge. What we also know is that you guys at your ELICOS providers are under-resourced to be able to manage the mental health challenges that you face with students. It is something that I think you guys all know. So let's have a look at what we can actually do, how I can help you upgrade your skills, and how we can also help students as well. Now, that research that we spoke about, there was a number of recommendations that came out from those research papers. Some of the researchers were brave enough to say, hey, we need to be doing things a bit different. One of those was some research that was done by the insurance giant Bupa. One of their recommendations was that we need to be doing stuff much earlier in that preventative and proactive space. How do we prevent young people from going from these small challenges over here to these really big ones? How do we prevent that? And we need to create a much bigger focus on that. Another thing that the Coroner's Prevention Unit mentioned was that, you know what? Universities, ELICOS providers, you're actually not mental health providers, and creating partnerships with people who are in that space means that you guys can do what you do best and we can do what we do best in that partnership to make sure that we are supporting not just the students, but also the staff as well. Now, the big question is why is there so many problems with international students, with ELICOS students, and mental health? And this is a really great question. And it's one of those questions that I'm not even sure that too many people are asking. So it's why we need to ask it. Why is it going on? Well, hello, COVID. What COVID has done is compressed the challenges that we've had, has made them feel tighter, more dense, more heavy, and then taken that denseness and heaviness and made it bigger. So any struggles that students or yourself, humans, were facing before, what's happened is that they have become bigger and more challenging. If you were struggling with loneliness pre-COVID, now you have been struggling with loneliness even more. If you were stressed pre-COVID, your stress has been magnified. If you were anxious pre-COVID, that's been magnified as well. So those existing struggles that we already know are there, COVID has tightened them and then it magnified, expanded that tightness as well. We also have this thing that we know about at Confidence Hackers. We call it the well-being paradox. It is incredibly frustrating. And it's this space of the students that need the help the most are also the ones that are the least likely to ask for it. Now, apart from just knowing that intuitively that that's what happens with students, the Coroner's Prevention Unit has also recognised that in the majority of those cases that they researched and that they looked at in that report, most of those students that ended their life had never, ever sought help for their mental health challenges. Now, we know that there's a number of reasons for that, language barriers being one, stigma being another, ease or difficulty of finding information, accessing it, all of those sorts of things. But these are all things that we simply must do better. And one of the reasons, even pre-COVID, we know that international students, ELICOS students, have been struggling with mental health for a really long time, since ever, right? And the reason is that well, there's a number of them, but from a human behaviour perspective, this is one of the reasons. It's called our core needs. Now, our absolute base core need, the absolute foundations of our well-being, is that we need to have certainty. We need to know that things are going to be, for the most part, predictable, for the most part, the same. Now, every person on the planet will recognise that over the last couple of years, certainty's kind of totally flown out the window. There's been times at the beginning of the pandemic when It wasn't just day by day things were changing. It was hour by hour, minute by minute. You didn't know 1 minute to the next what you could, what you couldn't, all that kind of stuff. The certainty factor was out the window. And that's why so many of us, not just our students, but so many of us personally, also struggled. Now, add on to the top of that, moving to another country to learn a brand new language that you've never known, to without your parents, without your friends, without anything that is known. Nothing is certain. Everything becomes a challenge. So dealing with uncertainty is already difficult because nothing in your life very much is certain. This is why I think all of us have been struggling through COVID, excuse me, but particularly our international and ALICOS students. ALICOS, I think, struggle the most, just simply because not only is everything new, but also they're coming here to learn a new language. So even asking for, how do you do this? How do you do that? How do you use public transport? All of these basic things that in their home country they could do easily, here becomes that level of certainty totally out the window. Another thing that has been a really big challenge for students during COVID, and I think for all of us, is this space of arrested development. Now, what do I mean by that? In human behaviour terms, adults, humans go through a 4-stage kind of process through their development. The first stage is reliance, where as a kid, we are totally reliant on our parents. You think of a baby, absolutely reliant on adults to do everything for them. Now, as we get a bit older into those teenage years, that's when the rebel comes out, where we test the boundaries. Everybody can go and get knotted, all of that kind of stuff. And for most of us, we move out of that stage and we move into an area that we call results. Now, results is all about getting shit done. It's about getting the next job or the promotion, getting the house, getting the girlfriend, getting married, getting kids, creating the results for ourselves. The next stage, which very few people reach, is a space called realization. Think about Buddha, Jesus, Mother Teresa, Gandhi, those kind of people that didn't have to think about the everyday stuff like you and I did. Their time, their mind was taken in these bigger challenges. Now, why is this important? It's because when we experience trauma, this is a very interesting word, trauma. When we experience trauma, our development can get blocked or stopped. What I'm hearing from a lot of providers in all sorts of different space in education is that students who are turning up, who are enrolling, who may be 17, 18, 16, are literally years behind in their development. They may be stuck in this place of reliance where they have no feeling that they have ability to do anything for themselves. I'm hearing other people that are saying, look, we've got a lot of students that are in that rebellion stage, and you ask them to do something and they just tell you to get knotted and say, piss off, I'm not doing it. When there is trauma, and please, COVID has been traumatic for, I think, most people on the planet, development gets shut down. This is why we're seeing additional challenges in this space. So what do we do about it? How do we do something different than what we have been doing? If we know that what's been working isn't helping, hasn't helped, we know this because 95% of students are struggling. Students are ending their life, they're quitting because they're so stressed and anxious. How do we do things different? Well, we need to start where students are at, not where we think that they should be. And for me, that's in student-facing conversations, is not talking about mental health. The reason I say that, and it feels a bit controversial, but the reason I say that is that we're dealing with students that have got generations and generations and generations of stigma to do with mental health. Now, we can do one of two things. We can either try and run up against that brick wall and go, we're just going to do it. We're just going to talk about mental health, or we can do things differently. And by not talking about mental health, by talking about other things that create mental ill health, we can support our students even better. We can talk to them at the level that they are at, where they're comfortable. Now, students are smart. They will eventually get that we're talking about mental health. And by that time, the conversation with them has changed, and that's important. This is why Confidence Hackers is called Confidence Hackers and not Mental Health Hackers, because we want to start those conversations with students in a way that feels safe for them, to create these conversations that feel safe for them. We do stuff that is preventative and proactive rather than reactive. We believe it's kind of cruel and unusual punishment to make students wait until they are down this end of the extreme stress scale to be able to help them. We know that we can do better. We use a method that we call hiding the veggies, which I absolutely love. Every parent here knows that you can grate carrots, zucchinis, all kinds of veggies and hide it inside of food. Now, what that does is it gives them the outside gives them what they want, but we hide in there what they need. When we have then unveiled to students that actually hidden inside of this has been this, and this, the realization has been amazing. The pennies dropping has been phenomenal. As we said, we've worked with about 8,000 international students since lockdown, and that has been mostly online, but also through a range of programs, pre-recorded online, programs and workshops, live online, and of course in-person stuff as well. We were fortunate enough at the end of last year to be awarded the IEAA Excellence Award for Innovation, and that's because we've looked at stuff in a very different, unique way in that preventative and proactive space. Now, I'd like to share with you just for a quick moment what the students say. I can tell you all about how amazing Confidence Hackers is, but it's the impact that I'd like to share with you.
First week it was like this, then it's like this now.
And that was so bizarre for me, to how just our thinking can manipulate the way we want things to go. So this small activity had a very big impact, because after that I started focusing on things that I really want.
This opportunity to bring these fantastic students to discover this area in Melbourne, that makes one of the most meaningful days during my experience in Australia.
I was in a very rough stage. It's been 2 years I've been living in the same place, and I've never talked with Mani. She just smiled at me and I'm like, hi. And then she was also like, hi. Since that day, I've been getting more social.
Courage Bucket is getting something done from your inner self so that you can have your tasks done.
So from those sessions, it really changed my perspective about how to improve my interpersonal skills and how do I perceiving this world.
Well, really give me a new mindset as well. Instead of thinking negative, I can start to think about the positive solution that I can approach to which, and instead of keep it to myself, I can express it with everyone.
I was going towards being an introvert, so which is not actually my kind. Somehow felt lost in the transition from coming from Melbourne to Mumbai. But of lately, I'm able to gel up with people again.
So beforehand, I would say around last year, I was a super shy person. I am an introverted person, I still am, but I try to break out of this wall, I would say, to meet new people because connections are important.
I'm going to stop that there because we have got so much more that I want to cover. Let me see if I can just move this slide on one more. Oh, dear me. Let me just jump out of that for a second and jump back in again. Technology is not really my strong point here. Wonderful. Now, you may have remembered that in that short video that we just watched of these amazing students, there was a student that talked about the courage bucket, and I'd like for us to take a quick moment to do this as a practical exercise for all of us as well. Now, what you may not realize is that I used to also be incredibly shy, like the girl on the video as well. I'm like the shyest person in the universe. I struggle to believe that myself sometimes. And I was waiting for decades, literally for decades, for the confidence fairy to come along with her magic wand and ding me on the head with it and give me this confidence that I just wished and waited and hoped would arrive. And what I learned many years later was that courage comes before confidence. Now, our international and ELICOS students many times have forgotten that actually their journey from being in their home country to being in an overseas country has been a massively courageous act. When I remind them of that, oftentimes it's like, wow, yeah, I forgot about that. So I've shared with a number of students of all ages this courage bucket exercise. I'd love for us to do it. It will only take a few moments. So join with me if you choose, if you'd like to close your eyes. And we're just going to take a couple of amazing breaths. This is breaths with intention. So what do I mean by that? We're going to breathe in through your nose, down into your belly, nice and gently, and then all the way out, just relaxing your shoulders. And another nice gentle breath in. And breathing out, relaxing your shoulders again. And in this next breath, as you keep breathing in and out nice and gently, I'd like you to remember a time when you were super courageous. Might be the word brave or courageous, strong even. Just remembering a time where you felt brave and courageous. And I'd like for you to take that picture, that feeling, whatever it is that's for you, that works for you, and move that feeling into your heart. And now on the next breath in, noticing that you can take amazing positive energy from the universe, sending that to your heart, expanding that feeling of courage in your heart, and allowing that feeling to feel even stronger, that picture to get even sharper and clearer. Now, in a moment, I'm going to ask you to do something that may feel a bit weird, and that is to reach into your heart and grab out this courage and put it into a bucket and hold this bucket in front of you. Now, your bucket of courage, your courage bucket, may be small, it may be big, it doesn't matter. In a moment, I'm going to ask you to then put that bucket up above your head, just like this. And on the count of 3, we're going to empty that bucket over your head, like the ice bucket challenge, but so much nicer. So on the count of 3, 1, 2, 3, emptying that courage bucket onto your head, shaking out all of the drips and feeling that courage running down over your head, your shoulders, down your arms, your front and your back, down your legs, and all the way down to your toes. Just feeling that feeling of courage. And now holding your courage bucket in front of you again, because you know sometimes there are times when you need to have super duper extra courage. Maybe it's an interview or an exam, something that you're super nervous about, where you need to have that extra confidence. So I'd like for you to just have a look into your courage bucket, and you'll notice that it has already refilled like magic. There is courage. You have never-ending courage. So let's go again on the count of 3, lifting it up. 1, 2, 3, tipping it over your head, shaking out, getting rid of, making sure all of that courage is emptied out. feeling it flow down over your head and your neck and your shoulders, down your front and your back, all the way down your arms, down your legs, and all the way down to your feet. And just noticing how this feeling of courage makes everything feel different. I'd like for you now to open up your eyes. And while we just take a little bit moment to do something else, I'd love for you to tap into the chat box what you have noticed was different just doing that quick exercise. And while you do that, I'd like to just very, very, very briefly, because oh my God, time flies so fast. In a month's time or so, I'm running a PD retreat called Come Alive for student-facing staff. So if you are a bit burned out, or if you're a newbie, come along. We'll be deep diving into a lot of the human behaviour aspects of looking after yourself and looking after others. Feel free to connect as well. This is my contact details there. Take a screenshot if you like. And let's see, do we have any questions? I know we've got a couple of minutes left. Sophie, do we have any questions there?
Great, thanks, Anita. That was really fantastic. And there are a couple of questions.
Fantastic.
The first question is, if a teacher suspects that a student is struggling with a possible mental health issue, what advice would you give them about how to start a conversation? Oh,
such a great question as well. One of the biggest things that we need to do is actually start the conversation. Now, I know for a lot of providers, they've been to mental health first aid training. Confidence Hackers have created a version that's a bit more gentle for students as well, and how to start those conversations. And it's about literally putting the courage bucket on if you need to, and sitting down quietly with the student one-on-one. It's not about going, hey, I've seen that you're terrible and you're this and everybody's noticed this. It's about sitting down quietly with the student and saying, hey, I've noticed that I don't think that you're yourself lately. Is everything okay? Yeah. Starting the conversation is vital. It's absolutely vital. So there is most definitely some easy ways that we can do that. The Confidence Hackers iCare, it's called iCare, the program, is all about how do we start those mental health conversations in a way that works with stigma rather than, again, that punching up against it.
Thank you.
That's okay. Was there any other questions there, Sophie? We've got another quick moment, I think.
There was a quick question from Robin, and she just said that, well, it's more a comment that she hopes sometime to be able to hear about your story and how you moved from shyness to Confidence Hackers.
Oh, look, it was, and you know what, it involved a bunch of epiphany moments, like a bunch of epiphany moments, which I think I'd had all the way along my life. My dad and my sister, incredibly charismatic people. And I think at some point there is this tap on the shoulder that you get. For me, it was a bolt of lightning. And that bolt of lightning literally said, Anita, if you keep doing the same thing, you're going to miss out on other people. And then there was this other little voice that said, and you know what? Other people are going to miss out on you. Because maybe, just maybe, sometimes you might have something that's interesting to say. And that was that moment that I went, you know what, I'm ready to do something about this. And at the moment that you're ready, that's when you can take those epiphany moments and move forward with them. Great question, Robin. Thank you.
Oh, thank you for sharing your answer as well. That was
Sure.
really insightful. Thank you so much. We will have to finish up there, Anita. I really enjoyed your session, especially just, hearing about all the additional challenges that students are facing from COVID. But I think for me, what really struck me was that idea of courage and how powerful it can be. And watching the students' videos and hearing them talk about, you know, even small things like social interactions with neighbours, how that takes courage. I can see how courage plays a huge part in international students' lives.
In all of our lives, 100%.
Absolutely.
All of our lives. So
Sophie, call it out.
Yeah. Thank you so much again. Can we please all just give the team at English Australia and the Mental Health SIG a woohoo? Thank you for having me, and I look forward to hanging around. I'll be here. If you've got any questions, feel free to put them through in the chat box and I'll be more than happy to answer.
Excellent.